Greetings everyone, this is Lodrik and this is a game War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, and today we will start to check the turn 1 combat animations. I already recorded and posted the setup for my turn 1, and I explained what a Japanese player must think about and what he have to choose and whatever options he have, so and some basic tactics maybe. And now we will see how I start my turn 1. Of course, this is my first play by email and against Dojo, and I will not make it really perfect, and I will make some mistakes. I will later explain they are not so clever to do, but everywhere we have to start. And this game you really maybe can play 3 years and still learn day by day something new. And of course there's always portions of luck inside, and the reaction and action of your enemy. So what works in the first game maybe will be a failure in the other game. So let's check what happened in turn 1. So we can see we start at December 7th of 1941, and this combat phase of turn 1 will be maybe very long. You can see already how my task forces are moving out. Here we can see that a dive bomber on scouting mission make a on the way attack and report a hit on an enemy destroyer. Here we also see a hit on a destroyer by a scout plane. And this is the first attack on Pearl Harbor now. We can see that there are some training airplanes in the sky, and our escorts try to get rid of them. I think escort airplanes have a lower maybe fighting ability to really intercept bombers, because their main purpose was normally training, and then we just catch them in the sky. But at least we can also say that our fighter pilots have something to do, because I use the Zero fighters purely only for escort duty. I don't make any ground attack with the Zeros. Simply they are elite pilots, and their target their main purpose is really only kill enemy airplanes, and to use a Zero for ground attack I think is simply not worth it. Yeah, we can see that we have the first bomb hits on enemy battleships and torpedo hits. And remember, this is the day 1, and only at day 1 the Japanese can make a port attack with torpedoes. Later the rule is if a port is level 3 or higher size, then it's protected against torpedoes. So I think the port 1 and port 2 you can still make a torpedo attack, but latest if it's a port 3 you only can make a level attack on enemy ships, but not more torpedo attacks. And you also can see that some of the Kates they transport this 800 kilogram bomb, and some they transport torpedoes. There's something I don't know. I check if the plane transport torpedoes. Yes, I mean first there is a check if the carrier have enough torpedoes, and the next check is if the airplane will use the 800 kilo bomb and make a level attack, or if there is some torpedo attack. And a torpedo bomber attack, of course, especially in Pearl Harbor and every other port, the tendency that enemy flag damage the airplane is simply much higher than a level attack. So if you have level attack, I use them normally with 8,000 feet, then only heavy anti-aircraft guns can fire on the airplane. This short range anti-aircraft is only up to 4,000, and I think the most medium caliber anti-aircraft go only 7,000, maximum 8,000. So if you fly 8,000, then normally there's only the big guns left, can hurt you. There's the next torpedo hit. I also did a lot of test runs. What is the optimum? And often what I find out is that in most cases it is possible to sink 2 battleships and to hurt 2 or 4 battleships to keep them out of the war for roughly 1 year. I think this is the average what is possible. Sometimes you're lucky and you can swing 3 battleships, in the most lucky situation maybe 4. But if you sink 4 then you damage less. So, or in the most unlucky situation you damage maybe all of them but you sink nothing. So at some certain point it's simply luck. So kill 2 and hurt 2 completely and 2 additional I think is okay. And in this case I use 2/3 of my dive bombers to attack the fleet, and only 1/3 I think is for airfield attack. And if I would play this game again, I would maybe say better go with dive bombers only for the airbase. Simply the 250 kilogram bomber can damage much easier airplanes on the ground. And out of many damaged airplanes you also get this written off airplanes. So, and to kill enemy Catalina scout planes is maybe one of the best options you have in the first months, because it simply allows the Japanese player to use Navy units undetected. If you don't kill most or many of these Catalinas, then the allied player can, if you want, bring these Catalinas to many smaller bases and always scout much. He can maybe still not, let's say, he cannot attack you, he will not really damage your fleet, but he can see you are coming. So if the allies players can see the Japanese are coming, then he simply can run. And then it's very hard to catch. Then you can still come with the biggest battleship fleet or the carrier fleet. It's not possible to, if the allies won't run, then you can try to catch them. Then the handicap is that you burn a lot of fuel with this kind of attempt. You must always try to surprise the enemy and make a sneak attack. You must sneak near enemy base, then try to surprise them, and then you can sink a lot of stuff, and then you try to retreat, and then you refuel and rearm your units. But if you only try to catch someone and the other one is running away, you maybe can catch him after some turns, but then you are also in a very dangerous situation. So this is only my roughly thinking and tactics how I will use them. And we can see here now the problem is with the dive bombers. You cannot really tell the game that the dive bombers attack smaller ships, and that the torpedo bombers focus for the battleships. There's simply, I think the squadron leader always make a decision what he want to attack. And if a dive bomber attack now all these battleships, they only can make some surface damage. Like they can maybe destroy the enemy flak guns and the medium guns and secondary guns, and everything what is on the surface of the ship can maybe get damaged. But with a 250 kilogram bomb, and if you're not having a super lucky hit, I think they all will bounce off. So means there's a percentage of hits with your dive bombers with no meaning. And if you use your dive bombers to attack the airfield, it doesn't matter. An airplane is an airplane, there's no armor, and it doesn't matter. So if you make a hit, then you make a hit. So you can benefit maybe more from your hits. You can see here again, 250 kilogram hit, belt armor hit, but no penetration. And again, deck armor hit, but again, deck armor hit. But if you don't read deck armor hit or penetrated internal explosion, something like this, then it's only say the bomb hit the ship and bounce off. There is no damage, or maybe there's a damage of 1 point. System damage like this. So if you maybe make 100 of these hits, you also maybe destroy a ship, but the other reason is why it's maybe best to use all the dive bombers for airfield attack is that if you do this, you have the option to make a second strike on Pearl Harbor the next day. You must know that in Pearl Harbor there are a lot of engineers, so it is easy for the Allies to repair a lot of damage in one turn. And so you will make the damage at daytime, at night they repair, so the Allied player is ready at the next morning to already operate the airfield with certain repair status. So even if you make, like say, make 100% damage on the airfield at today, December 7th, maybe at December 8th already 50% is rebuilt or repaired. So there's a possibility to make a counter strike and get more interceptors up. But if you, so I mean, and the best case is this 100% airfield damage. I don't know really if this is possible because airfield of Pearl Harbor is I think level 7 or level 8, so it's not so easy to make so many damage. But if your wish is to make a second attack at the next day, and you not play this 2-turn game like I did this now with Dojo, I would say really you try to simply get the enemy airbase shut down for at least 1 day, so that if you attack at the second day there's not much resistance, there are not many interceptors possible to take off, so that your bombers can make a smooth run on the harbor, because the second attack is already much lower efficiency. I mean the first there's more check, the one is a surprise attack, so you have much higher hit chance. Day 2 there's already a standard attack, you cannot use torpedoes more, you can only make a horizontal attack, so you will have it's much more hard to hit. And 800 kilogram bomb still hurt, but compared to a torpedo hit, it's I think maybe like half the damage. I would say you need 200 bombs with 800 kilogram to make the same damage like one torpedo hit. I simply have the feeling that the 800 kilogram bombs, they don't really do so much damage. They damage the battleship, yeah, they can penetrate the armor, that's for sure. I mean, not always, but most of the time. Just now we had a hit, but no penetration. Because the worst thing can happen is that you make the second attack on Pearl Harbor and then there are 200 enemy fighters in the air. And you only bring maybe 40-50 fighters with you. And then you lose many of your elite pilots. And also maybe many of your elite torpedo bombers or dive bombers. This for 6 fleet carriers with the Kiti Putai, they are really elite units. They have the best training, the best skills. There's normally, they not really can improve more much, but a little, of course, everyone can improve. So if you lose them early on for a greedy attack, so the second attack on Pearl Harbor is really a little risky. It's, let's say this, maybe there will be never a better chance than strike at the day 1 and day 2. It only gets more worse. The enemy will never be weaker than at these 2 days. So if you want to attack Pearl Harbor, you must do it at day 1 and at day 2. But the day 2 already have a higher risk chance. Okay. I let this play out now completely. Only this will be maybe really long video, but maybe some people like to see this, and we can also see. I mean, you get this information. We get here again a torpedo hit, Nevada again. And you also maybe must be unhappy if you don't really get many kills. It's maybe for the Japanese at the end more important to cripple the enemy battleship fleet completely for at least 1 year. I mean, there are 8 battleships, and if you can cripple all 6, 7 or even 8 and get them out of the war for 1 year or more, then it's maybe even better than sink 2 battleships and only to hurt 2 more. Then, because so long the enemy have no battleships, he cannot really make something surprisingly counter battery fire with his battleships. Like he can maybe try to use the battleships and try to make a bombardment of your airfields and kill all your airframes on the ground. Like you have many, like Wake, Marcus Islands and all these Marshall Islands. There are many islands, they're not very strong, but normally you have there some scout airplanes, maybe some fighters, some torpedo bombers, and if the Allied players, they are nearby Pearl Harbor, maybe if we go with full speed, then he maybe can make a surprise attack on you and damage all the base, and then he try to sneak away. Battleships and heavy cruisers, I mean battleships even better than heavy cruisers, they have the firepower to really wipe out a whole airfield in one strike if you are a little lucky. Especially if the airport is a little smaller. So if you have only an airfield of 3 or 4, then it's a light built airport. Every heavy shell will make a lot of damage. If it's a big airport like 7 or 8, it's much more concrete, so it's more heavy. It can handle more damage. Okay, this was the first attack. We hear that something sinks. And this is now the damage report. So we can see we come with 200, roughly you can say 240 bombers, and only as a minimum escort. This is simply, there is I think a limitation how many airplanes you can get in one strike, and I think it was 260 or something like this. You can see this is around 250, 260 I would say is the maximum airstrike capacity the Japanese can bring. I think I'm not sure if it will ever get more. I think this is the maximum. So every carrier strike group I normally manage that it's around 250 airplanes. Then you can, if it's possible, to bring all your airstrikes together. Then you make the attack with numbers. It makes no sense to have one air group with now 1000 airplanes together, because one airstrike can only have 250. It means if you have 1000 airplanes, you must have 4 airstrikes. You bring all your airplanes in the air. It's not that they cannot operate, but they cannot operate together. So, and the Americans, I think they have a maximum airstrike capacity of, I'm not more sure, 100, 110, 120 like this. And then I think every year they're getting 20 or 30 more. So I think in 44 or 40, latest in 45, the group size is the same. But in 41, 42, at least the Americans are very much more handicapped in the big strikes. In 33 they're starting to even up, and in 44 they're equal. This is also, this is from the reality. The Americans, they had not the ability to coordinate this all together. And the Japanese, they trained this much earlier on, before the war. And they try to say one carrier alone have power, but many carriers together have much more power. They can overwhelm the enemy defenses much more easy. So we can also see that we had a lot of damaged torpedo bombers, and we also lost a lot of our torpedo bombers by flak. So even if it is a surprise attack, and the flak power is I think reduced by 50% or like this, we still lost many torpedo bombers directly or by damage. Many of these damaged airplanes also will have a crash landing and be lost. And this is the airport. And we can see here now many damage, and but also this means not that there are 80 airplanes Catalinas are damaged, but this means a Catalina gets 80 times damage. In worst case, this can be one airplane gets 80 times damage, or it can be 80 airplanes gets each one's damage. And how much damage an airplane can handle before it gets destroyed on ground, it's normally related to what it hit, because if it's armor and then it's only a small machine gun bullet, then it's make nearly no damage. And then of course every airplane have something like hit points and blah 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 blah, and like this. And we can see we damaged something on the ground. It's not that we damaged nothing, but I would simply say I would really go all dive bombers for the airplane. I won't kill more on this or damage it on the ground. We also see now that we have now the Tennessee 5 bomb hits, but we don't know if it's a small bomb or a big bomb. 3 torpedo hits and heavy damage. So I would say the Tennessee is maybe not killed, but at least out for 1 year. We can see that the California gets nearly nothing, so maybe only 2-3 months, because 1 torpedo hit is not really much, and there's not even heavy damage. We can see the Nevada is really killed, so 1 hit kill. Then the Maryland is killed, so these are the 2 kills. Then the Pennsylvania is also hit by only 1 torpedo, but 6 bombs and heavy damage, so I would say also maybe 1 year out of action. The Oklahoma, 2 torpedo hits and 5 bomb hits, also heavy damage, heavy fly. So also I would say 1 year out of action. Then we have here the Arizona, is not heavy damage, so maybe only 3 months, but 2 torpedo hits. And West Virginia is also 3 hits and heavy damage. So we say we sunk 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4 battleships are maybe out of action for 1 year. And the Arizona, the California, I would say the California and the Arizona, they are only slightly damaged, maybe only 3 months out of action. So it is okay because we sunk 2 and we damaged 1, 2, 3, 4 battleships. 2 are only lightly damaged. So the efficiency against the battleships, I would say, is okay, maybe good, but not very good or perfect. But then you also must see what else you hit. There's a lot of stuff in Pearl Harbor. I think the most important is that you maybe can get rid of the heavy cruisers, submarines, light cruisers. They are more important. The destroyers are not really important. All these American destroyers are very cheap. They have far too many. So killed destroyers are normally not important. But the AV is always good to hit. Ammunition transporter is always also good to hit. PT is of course totally it doesn't matter. It's only 1 point ship. So AV is good. AV is good here. Mine layer I don't care. The submarine will be dead normally because I don't think the submarine can really handle a bomb hit. We can see that we damaged 2 light cruisers and one heavy cruiser. It's okay, nothing too crazy. So overall I would say it's an okay attack. Nothing. I think this comes close to the reality. I mean, in America, of course, in reality, the Japanese maybe they sunk more battleships, but in reality, if the battleship sunk in Pearl Harbor, it was still possible to repair the battleship and get it back online, also in 1 year or 1.5 years. Many of these battleships sunk in Pearl Harbor. In 43, they are ready for action again. So in this game, if the ship sunk, it's dead completely. They don't simulate this possibility to recreate the battleship if it's sunk in a harbor, because the water is very shallow. So you can normally fix the hole, then you pump the water out, and then you refloat the ship, and you bring it to the dock, and then 1 year later it's done. This is not possible in this game. Here is only all or nothing. So I would say this is very close to the historical damage. And also some guys are dead here. And the little damage here, so we can see that most important is if you focus for the airfield attack, that you get these runway hits much more. So we use maybe only 1/3 of our dive bombers for the airfield attack. So if we go with all, then maybe we can get a runway hit of to 90. And this will be then maybe the 100% kill of the airfield. But still, the Allies will repair overnight maybe 1/3 of this. So maybe the next day the runway is damaged to 2/3. But still, airplanes can take off. But not many. Many will have the check, can take off, and then they say no, you cannot take off. Failure. But some will take off for sure. Good. This is the first attack of Pearl Harbor. This is now sweeping actions of Manila, because normally there's 3 important airports in northern Philippines. It's Clarkfield, Manila, and the base south of Manila. I forgot the name now. But I use my long range zeros to try to intercept them. There we can see. The P-26 is similar to the A5, the Cloud. This is simply a pre-war mid-30 or beginning of 30 type of school airplane. It's for training a pilot, but not really for fighting anything. So I also think that this air squadron is simply in the Philippines to train pilots. And we just catch them in the air and get rid of them. Because still if the pilot, I mean the airframe may be shitty and have no really threat against our bombers or fighters, there's still a pilot inside. And the purpose is simply try to kill as many pilots as possible at the first days, so that the enemy cannot train them up and give them later a better airplane. Okay, 2 kills, maybe 3. Yeah. This is some long range bomber attack on Nauru and I think later on, maybe the next day on Ocean Islands. Still there's 2 bases, they're producing resources. There's only very small garrison, so I'll only soften them up to later have an easy landing operation. So this is a Clark field, we tried to intercept something, but there was nothing, pitifully. Now the main strike on Manila port. So this is now a port attack. And you can see that we are really coming now in strafing. So we come in 100 feet. So I use now my airplanes, they're making a bombing attack. But they're also using their frontal guns to damage the ships. I mean, of course, these light machine guns, they will do nothing. They have really no ability to hurt something. But the Zero have the 20mm guns. And the 20mm guns are maybe enough to at least damage a little against submarines. The main purpose was normally for coming with a Zero so low that the Zeros simply make a little damage here and a little damage there against enemy submarines. Main purpose was that I hope to damage many submarines so that they cannot dive away more easy. Because if a submarine, I think, have a certain amount of flotation damage, it's not more possible to dive. And if a submarine cannot dive more, yeah, then it's an easy target. Here we can see we hit now a small cargo ship, but or a troop transport, and we can maybe make a little damage. So of course a 20mm gun is a 20mm gun. I don't expect too much. My hope was that the Zeros go for enemy submarines. The question is if would he change something? Maybe not. I think still it's really the most important if you play with this surprise attack and the allies don't have will not act at the day one, because normally this is a surprise attack. So I would normally say the Japanese can do whatever they want and the allies simply, at least at December 7th, the first turn, they simply do nothing. Because then only in this case it is a surprise. If the allies already changing something from the original setup, then it's like they know something will happen. Then it's no more a surprise. If you say, I mean, that is up to the game rules. What you you agree for. But in this case, Dojo Che, we make it like the original. The Americans, they play dumb. They say, we know from nothing. We let the Japanese simply strike us so that we later can say, oh, you're bad Japanese guys. Oh, how you can do this. Oh, what a surprise. I mean, And I of course say, okay, if this is a surprise attack, I want have in Pearl Harbor, my main purpose is damage or sink enemy battleships. And in Manila port, I won't get rid of the enemy submarines because the most submarines from the Americans are here in Manila. And if you don't get rid of the submarines at the first day, they will be, at least they make a lot of trouble. Maybe they are not very successful because they have this old, but not successful Mark 14 torpedoes, most of them. But still they make trouble. And if you can get rid of them now, then you can get rid of them. So there's not much more in Manila. There's normally a lot of cargo, some support stuff, but also I think 20 or 24 submarines. And if you get rid of at least half of them, or can damage most of them, and then they must run away, then you have maybe 2-3 months without much enemy submarine activity. And also, and you can now see my game, I would simply say that first at the beginning of February, Dojo is able to really use the submarine, American submarines, to start something like a submarine campaign against a local area. He uses Dutch submarines and maybe also some British submarines, but this is another topic, this is somewhere else. But the American submarines, I think I crush most of them or force them to return to Pearl Harbor early on. And I simply say, I try to bring all my bombers in Takao, here in the south of the Taiwan. And then I make a calculation which of these bombers can reach Manila. And every bomber I can get to Manila, I attack with a port strike. Every bomber cannot reach Manila, I normally will make a airfield attack here in the north. And this is in the first turn. Simply what is possible to strike Manila port, I go for Manila port. Everything what is not possible, I try to attack the airfield. This is the only thing what matters for the surprise attack on the Philippines. Nothing else. Yeah, and I use some zeros because the chance that a zero will attack a submarine is not very high, so I break one of the zero squadrons into smaller and make this sweeping, what we saw before, and the other one I focus for Manila. So we can now see that we only had some damage airplanes. And this is a V, so this is a assistance seaplane. They are also always good because they're making scouting. So if you get rid of them, it's good because it will reduce the ability for the allies to scout you. So we have here sunk battle submarine, heavy damage submarine. Normally, I think if a submarine is heavy damage, it's normally also dead, more or less. Then more. So 1, 2, 3. Then here's a oiler on fire. An oiler on fire is hard to get under control. Also important. Yeah, here's a troop transport, but we don't see any damage. But yeah. So one more submarine dead. A destroyer, okay, not so important for me. Then here more heavy damage submarine, sunk submarine, heavy damage submarine, sunk submarine, heavy damage submarine. Again damage, heavy damage, heavy damage. Okay, this one only maybe get some splinter or nothing really happened here. Heavy damage, this is a system submarine. They're working with submarines together, so if you can get them, get rid of them, the submarines have some, not so easy way to rearm torpedoes. So you can see we sunk or damaged, not really sunk many, but we damaged a lot of the submarines. And maybe 50% of the submarines will go down in 1 or 2 days. And the rest at least need a long time to repair. And the question is where Dojo can repair. Normally if you attack Manila and you do this damage, then the allied player only have two options. He try to repair Manila, but then there's always a risk of the next port attack, or he try maybe to bring the submarines to a base nearby. So maybe to the Dutch islands in Java. But then he must still go all this way, and if the submarine is damaged, yeah. Okay. This is the early start of the Chinese bombardment. I simply say everything what is next to my armies I try to pin down. I mean that we know. That is my standard tactic in China. And here we is only a little unlucky because before I had a sweep of Clarkfield. But the sweep found nothing. Now the bombers are coming, and this time there was some training airplanes in the sky, and they intercept my bombers. So the commander makes the right choice. He say fighters first, bombers second. But still, the mission was not also successful I hoped for. But this is simply not possible to have everything perfect. The fighters are zeros and belongs to the Navy Air Command, and these are Army bombers, so they don't belong to the same command chain, so they don't operate together. But we can see that at least our bombers, even if they are, I mean the Japanese bombers so far, they are really focused for, let's say, cheap and fast. No armor, not really many hit points. I think the Japanese, they try only to boost many bombers in a cheap way. And they simply say a bomber don't defend themselves, there's always escort fighters, something like this. And now we're making the runway hit. The only problem is now that this bombers had a fight with enemy interceptors, so the hit chance is simply reduced because they are not more in the best order. Because they had this attack with enemy interceptors. If an interceptor can reach the bomber and attack the bombers simply must change the formation. And then they don't change more. They are not more coming in the bombardment formation. They're more like this, like a defense formation. And the game simulates this like in this way that if you can get through, okay, it's fine, but your hit chance will be now lower. So we will hit now with less efficiency. Still we damage some airplanes in the ground. We don't, but if we had not this fighters, then I'm for sure we can hit more. But nothing is perfect. And I would not say there's no really way to really get it better. Yeah. This is now the air battle of Manila, and at Manila, or in this whole area, the Malayan campaign, at the beginning of the war, I think there's 2 air bases you must get rid of them. This is Georgetown and I think here, this base in North, I don't know the name. If I remember, in Georgetown, I think the Allies, they have a lot of bombers, and I think here are a lot of fighters. So you must normally organize your bombers to hit these two airfields at the beginning. If you get rid of the fighters on the ground or the bombers on the ground, it's normally we better try to get both. You don't must destroy them. It's normally enough if you only damage the airplanes on the ground. Then they cannot use them more for at least 1 or 2 turns. So we can see here, or maybe here are the fighters, I don't know more. But you can see we don't really destroy many, but we get the, I mean, these are only 21 bombers. So, and we only can carry 1 bomb because this is a long range attack. But even this, at least we only throw 21 bombs, and with just 21 bombs we damaged many of the airplanes on the ground. So it means they cannot make a counter strike. This is now the second. And there we can see, I think now we really get rid of, that means every airplane is at least damaged now. Some are even destroyed. And also the runway is highly damaged. So Georgetown is more or less now disabled for this December 7th. Yeah. And this is now the other airbase. Yeah, this I mean, we not really damaged many airplanes on the ground, but we damaged the air runway completely. I mean, 50% are really damaged. Here we can also see that we now dropping some more bombs. But I still think this is a long range attack. But this information is missing here. You can only see it with the numbers of bombs. I think normally for a normal attack you can carry 4 250, and so it's now only 2. So the next. So now we can see now additional damage, so the airport will be also now normally closed for at least 1 day. And this is not Pearl Harbor, here are far less engineers, so it's very hard for the British to repair this airfield. So normally if you damage them so hard at the first turn, I don't think there's really much possibility for the British to get this airports ready for duty again. So this is now the torpedo bombers from Shanghai, because in Shanghai you have torpedoes. You also have, I think, torpedo bombers somewhere else, but a torpedo bomber without a torpedo is really not really so successful. The only problem is we are still in range of the airbase of Singapore. In Singapore there are some fighters, so if you make a torpedo attack too close to Singapore, there's a very high chance, like now, that there are interceptors coming. And even a shitty Buffalo is not very strong, but the problem is that these Navy bombers are simply too slow. They have no armor, no hit points. So it's always a massacre. If this happens, you always have a problem. You need 0 or something else to make an escort with this Navy bombers if you want to attack near an enemy airbase. But we can see that at least some torpedo bombers have the attempt to attack the Prince of Wales. And we make at least 1 torpedo hit on the Prince of Wales. But that's all. So I would say, I mean, we lost 2. I think the damaged one also will not return because this is very far away. So at least I think we lost 3, maybe even 4 airplanes, and we get 1 torpedo hit. It's hard to say if this is worth it, but at least we get 5 torpedoes in the water. So out of this 8, only get 5 was able to launch the torpedo. And out of 5 torpedoes, we make 1 hit. We hear something sunk. But of course, I mean, it cannot be Manila or it can be Pearl Harbor, we don't know. There we get again, we hit an enemy destroyer in Hong Kong. This is our invasion fleets. You can see where I focus. Kota Baru and so now it's afternoon strike. Okay, you can still see there are still interceptors from Singapore coming, and yeah, our Navy torpedo bombers. It's really a problem. You can limit the strike range of your Navy bombers. I simply told my Navy bombers, don't fly. This is the maximum distance. Because each hex you're away from Singapore, the chance and the numbers of interceptors will be reduced. So, if you want to simply reduce the risk that this happens, that your Navy torpedo bombers run in this interceptor stuff, then you can normally say, okay, I go 1 more hex less, so I go only maybe up to this hex. But if you have less range, then you also have less possibility to hit the enemy battleship. So if the Prince of Wales and recruits are now east of Mersing, they're in this hex. And if I tell my torpedo bombers only fly up to this hex, then there will be no attack. Then I will not lose any torpedo bombers, but then there will also be no attack on these battleships. So, but I would not go with torpedo bombers to attack something like go up to Singapore. Then then you will lose for sure 50% of your torpedo bombers, I would say. This is a calculated risk option. I say I go up to here, I know there will be enemy fighters coming, but I have to risk it because to have here 2 enemy battleships, and if these battleships can reach my landing invasion fleet, that will be a bigger problem. So I simply must risk my navy pilots in this operation to stop the enemy battleships. Nothing will be more terrible than if the battleships can arrive at the landing zones. And we can still be lucky because the enemies only have buffaloes. If the British have here already hurricanes at the beginning, then oof. And this will be really bloody for me. So with the buffaloes I still can say, yeah, okay, come, kill 10%, maybe kill 20%, but it's acceptable. So, at least we get now 15 torpedo bombers. Okay, there's one dead, more or less. So you can see this attempt was a totally failure at the end. I think the main reason was the torpedo strike was intercepted. And in this case, there's still, like I said before, the efficiency will drop. And we can see we come here with 21 torpedo bombers. Out of 21 torpedo bombers, we get 13 torpedoes in the water, but we get no hit. And we lost torpedo bombers, but yeah. Now we come with again 25 more. So you can see then this is now the third strike, and the amount or the numbers of interceptors getting less and less and less. But you can also see all this defense fire we have is normally only enough to break the enemy attack. We normally never really hurt the enemy fighter. We only force the fighter to stop the attack and turn around and try it again. And if you do this 2-3 times, then the airplane have simply no fuel more and must return. Like this, we always force him, okay, try it again. Now we get one more. Ooh. Okay, maybe we are now a little more lucky. Okay, you can see this was the first attack already one torpedo hit. And the second torpedo hit. So, that is of course very good. So 2 torpedo hits on the Prince of Wales. And this is one more on the reports. I think the reports already had one. So I think now each battleship, and there's a second. So I think now both have 3 hits, and I would normally say a battleship 3 is possible, 4 is the last, and the maximum normally a battleship can handle. If you get 5 hits on a battleship, normally it's always dead. So I would say now each Repulse and Prince of Wales each have 3 hits. So if we can get one more. Okay. You can also see that these British battleships, they simply have really good flag. So even without interceptors and the torpedo bombers suffer. But we get 3 hits on each ship, so I don't know more. One of the ships have now 4 torpedo hits and one has 3 torpedo hits. They are all both heavy damage. So even if they not sink, they are, I think, for sure have damage for maybe 1 year. So in this case, if they can escape and they escape to Singapore, then there's a question for the allied player, in this case Dojo, what you want to do. You want to keep them in Singapore, and how long you keep them in Singapore. If you dock them in Singapore, for how long? Maybe 1 week to make the emergency repair, and then maybe, I mean, most will try to go for Colombo, and then repair in Colombo, or go to Bombay and repair in Bombay. Or you can also try to go to Cape Town. Then it's for sure, if the ship can arrive in Cape Town, then it's safe, because it's not possible for the Japanese to attack Cape Town. But yeah, it's distance, needs time, depending how damaged the ship is. If the flotation damage is not so terrible, then you can go to Cape Town. But if you have a lot of flotation damage, then there's a risk that the flotation damage get increased over time, and then maybe the ship will sink on the way to Cape Town. Okay, this is now the attempt of Dojos. This is the counter strike, and I simply try to, I shut down these 2 airports. So, and I also use my K200, the 27B. Normally they have no real use, but it's the first month of the game. You must use them. You have not enough Oscar fighters and other stuff. So you must use them at the beginning for normally this kind of cap and maybe sweeping. It's like even if they not really can kill something, they can intercept and damage stuff. And this also will give some experience to the pilots. So later, if you can change these airplanes to Oscars, then they have really something they can work with. This airplane is really we can see that the Hudsons, I think they also only use light machine guns, but the Nate have simply no armor and very low hit points. So for the Hudson, it's possible to really hurt our fighter and force him to return to base. And it's very hard for our fighters to really stop the enemy bombers. Even they are only simply bombers, but so this is why the reason I would say this is really a purely training airplane. It's not wrong to use it to train the pilots, but they are really totally useless for any action. Maybe in China you can use them to fight enemy I-15s, I-16s, but that is the maximum what you can get out of this. Normally I would say training. And that is fine. I don't throw them away, I use them for training, and that is fine. The problem with the Nate is they're only using 2 light machine guns, so it's nearly impossible to penetrate any armor. The next problem is that this, if you make a hit, you don't really damage a lot, so you must make many hits. And you must also come very close. The light machine guns, they have only very short range, so if you really want to do something, you must come close, and that means the defense fire of the bomber often can drive you away. So we hit each bomber several times already, maybe, but still they can operate. So if you have this heavy machine guns, the Oscars they will use, or the machine cannons from the Zeros, then normally one hit. And then also these Hudsons, they don't have armor, I think, and they also then gets easy blown up. But with light machine guns, it's simply really not easy. Now we get a kill, at least. Most important is normally not really to stop them, but like what happened with my torpedo bombers, to break the enemy formation, that they have less, that they, maybe if they arrive our landing force, that they not in the best position to attack, and then they have a very low chance to make an attack, make a successful strike. Yeah. So 2 bombers can penetrate the we have some flak and no hit. So far so fine and so good. 3 more coming, so you can see they're coming from Singapore. So because these 2 air bases are close, and so they must also fly a long distance, and means if we damage the airplanes, there's also a very high tendency that these damaged airplanes also will crash on the return. And on the way back we can also kill now too. Kota Baru is normally, if it's possible for you to kill these two bases, and Kota Baru normally is nearly out of range. You can see this is maximum range from Singapore. More critical is normally the landing zone here in this area, or if you're going for Mercy, it's very critical. It's nearly impossible to get air cover immersing, so attack immersing at the first 2-3 days is very risky. I would say you need a Kota Baru and also Kuantan and have an airbase here. And if you have an airbase here in Kuantan, then you can use air cover for immersing. Then you land maybe what I will do more or less. I mean, at least let's say 1 week later you can land immersing. And if you are successful with this, then you have still enough time normally to cut the retreat line of most of the British forces. Of course, if you go with everything on day 1 immersing and can take immediately immersing, then you rush, then you can really trap all British forces here. And maybe then it's enough to really take Singapore in 1 or 2 weeks. But this is more or less a all or nothing option. And you risk a lot. You can win a lot, but you also risk a lot. Okay, this enemy attack we can stop. And for me it is fine if this light fighter simply only can damage the airplane, so that they will not make much damage. I mean, if you are unlucky, they still can hit your ships. Yeah, but this is a war game. It's totally normal to suffer at least a little every day. And nothing will be perfect. Yeah. It's it was enough to break the enemy. So they turn around, but normally the game must say this, but somehow, yeah. And this is here the most dangerous stuff. Is this wildebeest, the torpedo bombers. This is also why I normally would say don't attack or immersing at the first day. I mean, even this is the standard setup. This is a surprise attack. So Dojo did nothing, but the British was already at the alarm status. The British already know something looks not so peaceful more. So they already have their fighters in cap. The torpedo bombers and army bombers also in ready status. So if you will attack Mersing, the British will take all of Singapore even at day 1 and try to intercept you. The risk is that the Prince of Wales and the Repulse will take on surprise and battle you, and Mersing is high. You have much more enemy fighters in the air. You have a very high chance that there's enemy torpedo bombers coming. So this is why I don't go for Mersing at day 1. I say first Kuantan, take an airbase or capture the airbase, get interceptors here, Zeros, Oscars, and then make air cover Mersing, and then some days later attack Mersing. Then of course the allied player can regroup his air forces and can still attack Mersing if you are coming, but at least you have fighter cover. And then it's up to the skills of the fighter pilots if they can stop the enemy bombers. You can see here now the A1 Oscar. The A1 Oscar is like the Key 27, normally not a fighting airplane. Yeah, They are maybe more faster, but they have really no punching power. They also use only these 2 light machine guns, so you can forget them. The 1B at least have already 1 heavy machine gun. That is just barely enough to really make damage. You can see we damage, but it's hard to get the kill. So you can see that the Oscar 1B is it's very hard to get the kill. We damage and we force the enemy buffaloes to return. Yeah, we can stop them, but you can see even if we make a critical hit, it's not enough really to blow the enemy fighter up. It's a in this case, we force them to return. That is the best we can hope for. It's normally also enough. You don't must kill now the enemy fighters. I think now it's really important. It's the first days. It is only important get your troops on land, have a successful invasion, take the bases, install a new air base. That is really the most important. Not to get kills now. Now you protect. If you I would simply say try to get as many zeros and Oscar 1Cs at the front line. They are the only airplanes you really can use to really battle enemies, fighters. The 1B is just so, the 1A you can forget, the Key 27 you can forget, the A5M I think 2, the Cloud Fighter you also can forget. They are really only training airplanes. Yeah, okay. You can see that there was no attack on our fleet. So it was possible to stop and break the attack. This is the most important. They tried to attack us, but we hold the line. And this is the distance. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you come to Mersing, it's only 2 hexes, so more airplanes will attack normally in Mersing. And if you damage something in Mersing, it's more easy to return and to repair. If we now damage something in here, then the tendency that it will not return as higher. So if we damage here something now, we have maybe less to fight the next day. And now you can see the difference. Now there's 2 zeros and they really get a more easy, much easier get rid of these buffaloes because they have this 20mm cannon and they simply making a lot of damage. If you get a hit with a 20mm gun, there's normally always an easy hit for the buffalo. If you fight later against the Hurricanes and the better American airplanes, then also the 20mm gun can damage but not kill immediately normally. Yeah. There are a lot of air battles today, so I think we can skip this now. We will see how it ends. Most important is again we break the enemy attack. Again, they cannot attack our ships. We always stop them. More wildebeest. There's also airbase. Normally, if you are lucky, you make a shell bombardment and then you can maybe destroy the airplanes on the ground. In this case, I don't know, there was no shell bombardment, so these airplanes are still operational. A little too late. But at least we have 1-0 here, and these are very slow torpedo bombers. No armor, no hit points, so you can see that this lucky Zero fighter, he stop at least some of them. So this is now one of the first attacks on our landing forces, and it was not successful. Yeah. There are simply too many attacks now. Our cap is so low. But again, no hit on our ships. Only one 1B left. So, but now then, normally I only fear the torpedo bombers. The torpedo bombers, they can really make one hit, one kill. Most of the others, they simply don't carry this heavy equipment. So we cannot stop, we don't even reach the enemy bombers. So now these bombers can make a maximum skill attack, but they fail. Yeah. I mean, they carry only 100-pound bombs. Even if this bombs hit, will not really make a lot of damage. Now the torpedo bombers coming, and we have only one interceptor. Yeah, damage but no kill. And again, damage. But it's simply not enough to force the enemies to break the attack. I mean, these are only very slow biplanes. If we have a 1C, maybe we can kill them all, dum. But with a 0, for sure we can kill them easily. But this is the reason why I normally don't like these machines, and you never produce them, never really use them for long active duty, only training. So all 5 torpedo bombers break, and they carry their 500-pound bombs, so a 250 kilogram bomb. And that is the first cargo ship get a hit. The next cargo ship also get a hit. So 2 cargo ships get a hit, and we have the first 90. I mean, we have a lot of damage. Damage is still, or disabled is not so critical, a little, but killed. And 2 cargo ships. And cargo ships are really normally not so, especially if they are on fire. Okay. I think these are the dive bombers attacking the destroyers outside of Pearl Harbor. This is not a Pearl Harbor attack, this is a Navy attack, not a port attack. And we have here some training aircraft, and for some reason one of our pilots maybe gets a surprise and gets killed. Normally this would not, I mean, a little stranger, the elite Zero fighter pilot, and this is only some, I mean, training, yeah, they are normally on training mission, so they are only students, they want to learn something or improve their skills, and then they get a kill on our zeros. This is unlucky, simply. But we drive them away, and so the dive bombers can now attack the destroyer. And they will make 1 hit. But these are very small destroyers, so 3, 4, maximum 5 points. It's not really a primary target. But 2 hits are normally, I think, enough to sink a ship. Now we have the 3rd hit already. Number 4. Yeah, now it's time to sink, I would say. Okay. I mean, 27 dive bombers for one small destroyer is maybe a little much, but you can see also that the dive bombers are coming from 10,000, then they're diving down, and then you can see they're releasing the bomb. I don't know. You can see the difference. Some release more high, some like this one he don't release. I think at that time there was already the destroyer was sunk already, so they simply skip more or less maybe the attack, and others they going for the dive. So we're a little lucky, no hit. They try to make a bomb strike out of 15,000 feet. Possible, but I don't think that the British pilots are so skillful. So this was the afternoon of December 7th. So this was now the surprise strike of the Japanese. Now we're shelling Wake Island. Wake, I would say, is important to take quickly. Don't let the allies reinforce Wake. Wake is simply too near to your own bases. You need Wake to cover all the sea around. I mean, but Wake will be only something like a scouting base. You cannot really use Wake much more. Scout airplanes and maybe for submarine base. But if you want to really install the submarine base is the other question. And most important is I won't get damage the airplanes and damage their units and prepare for invasion. Now you can also see that now we're making the shelling. And normally every invasion fleet you better have at least one, better is normally always 2 heavy cruisers or 2 battleships. If you want to take a base with some resistance, if there's nothing or only very very small stuff, you can also use light cruisers. But normally I would say if you want to make damage, you need heavy cruisers, battleships. Like in this case, we soften up the enemy defense. Of course, this has the problem is that we damage the base, and then we must repair the base. But I would simply still say you better destroy too much and repair it later and not have a failed attempt to take the base. Yeah, now all the Hudsons, they attack us, they'll get at least damage, I would say. And many British kills. But yes, of course, also the runways are completely damaged. This is destroyers. I simply have no, everything else is already busy, so I only had these destroyers left to attack this base. Because here are also some fighters, and simply I can damage them. Damage need normally 1 or 2 turns, often not much more, but 2-3 turns to repair. So, and if they, and this is critical in the first days that you damage everything, then the ally cannot normally respond very fast and strongly, so then you have time to finish your landing, and after you land, then normally it's not more easy for allies to really hurt you. There are now the heavy cruisers coming. So we can see we damaged, I think, all of the fighters on the ground now. And the Philippines, the landing, I would simply say, to take this base, I think this is San Fernando, and this base in the source. You can choose. This is a pre-invasion of San Fernando. We simply bring here everything on shore what is possible. Here south of Manila to cut this line so that some units are here off. Have no link more to the supplies of Manila. The risk is simply only you must bring here enough forces because you are next to Manila. In the worst case, the allied player simply can focus all his units and try to crash your source landing forces. So you must bring so many forces that you can say, okay, I can hold off the enemy counter-strike. So, and you must also be close enough to Manila with your forces and have enough here that if you see that the allies coming here to source, that you really try to rush to take Clarkfield. Because if you can get rid of Clarkfield, this is already the most important, because this is really hard to take. Here is 3 times defense area. So if you take Clarkfield, if the allies are going south, it's a win. It's a risk. It's a risk. I would simply say balance these 2 armies, get them both strong enough that the allies cannot wipe you out easily. And for the allies, American player, it is risky. If we really try to go for one army, if you see the Japanese coming with 2 armies, that he focus for one side. If he don't be successful and cannot crash the one army, then he can lose the Philippines very quickly. It's similar to what you do with Singapore. You can go for Singapore, or go for Mersing and then go directly for Singapore. This is a risky option for the Japanese, and for the Americans, it's a risky operation. Try to crash one of the landing armies. And I really try to bring what is possible at day 1 onshore already. Simply, I only fear the enemy torpedo bombers. You can lose a lot of guys very quickly if the enemy air force can attack your transport units. I use even this shitty stuff to make an attack. Bring more units. This is now here only this first Chinese cleanup operations. Normally you need this link that the supplies can flow easy, and I would simply say try to get rid of this unit, because then you can transport much easier stuff from Chuko down here to the center of China. And this is 7th December 41 of my original setup. Normally there is not much I would change. Only normally Pearl Harbor go dive bombers all for airport. And I don't think that there's really much more you can change. The torpedo bombers attack for the Prince of Wales and repulse. If you limit the range of the torpedo bombers, then you maybe have no attack at all. In this case, we get at least 3 or 4 torpedo hits on them. So we disable them. We not maybe sunk them, but we maybe disable them. And again, a lot of short bombardment. But all these small ships have normally not a possibility really to do damage. Light cruisers, destroyers also, often they simply do nearly nothing. So heavy cruisers, battleships are for bombardment. All the rest is waste of fuel, I would nearly say. we can do here some damage, but also depends, of course, if the enemy have in which mode the unit is, and if there's some enemy defense situation, like if there's a fort level like this. A lot of invasions. Here we can see that there's a task force, but I don't know more which task force. And then we have a submarine here, but I mean, if you're lucky, your submarines already can support. And maybe if you can find these crippled enemy battleships with the submarine, then for the submarine will be easy normally to sink them. But you don't really have a lot of submarines in that area at the beginning, so the whole setup of the Japanese are not perfectly, I would say. I would do it different way, but that's the game. So something sunk, but it's not our ship. Ambon, there's an enemy airbase where I use my heavy cruisers. I maybe would not do this again. I would maybe use this heavy cruiser formation for something in the Philippines again. At the beginning, it really only matters that you take the Philippines as quickly as possible in the Malaya, Singapore area. And everything else is not really important. I use it normally to simply also cripple the enemy dojo's possibility to scout here much, and also to damage everything so that he is under pressure. Normally the idea of this attack was more or less pressure Dojo and let him fear that I come immediately, and then he must think about what he's doing. And because we cripple the enemy scout airplanes, he don't know what is coming. I mean, in best case, he don't know what is coming, then he must guess, ooh, the Japanese are coming, I must maybe try to take all out, or I must send you reinforcements here. Tja, if you don't know, you must guess. So we damage here a lot of airplanes on the ground. And again, but here we can see there's no really... We don't really do any damage with this kind of ships. Again, no damage really. So everything what is possible to use in the first turn I really throw on Dojo. To simply only make sure that the base I won't take, I take quickly, without any big fight, only because once you have a base, you can unload everything without any trouble normally. Then you can only unload. But you need the base, at least one base is enough. Okay, and more, but yeah. We're unloading more or less supplies, and we disable a little of his forces so that the forces on the beach have a easy task to kick out the enemy. Then it's our base, and it's once our base we can normally unload without any problem more, without the risk of losing additional units. No enemy return fire. Yeah, unluckily our destroyer don't kill this AVD, but that can happen. Yeah, the only thing what I not did and what I would of course change is at the beginning we have I think 5 or 6 of these mini submarines here in Pearl Harbor, and normally the automatic setup is to attack Pearl Harbor, and I would go for this. Normally out of this 6 submarines only one have a successful attack, and they're only using small torpedoes, so the damage they do is not really important, but at least they can make attack. Because the problem is I try anything else is not really working. They are useless. You can really say they are useless. So the 6 mini submarines you have, throw them on Pearl Harbor. If you're lucky, they hit 1 or 2 battleships, and then they are all dead, and then it's over. And then don't use them more. I try here something else. I throw them on other harbors because I was thinking maybe okay, Pearl Harbor is maybe too big, but even if you, I think the possibility to make an attack doesn't matter how big is the port. It's the chance is always only like 10% to make a hit. And in Pearl Harbor they're attacking, if they are successful, they're attacking the battleships. If there's another port and there's only like a destroyer or a cargo ship, then the chance to make a hit is also small. And if they hit, then they only hit a cargo ship. So compared to a battleship, of course, then better go for the battleships. So here we say we make a hit on the AMC, so 1 point Minesweeper. So we lost our scout airplane, enemy shot them down. Yeah. Yeah, bad weather can of course always happen. So this is no. Our zeros from day one, they're coming back and try to find something, and they're still finding this training airplanes in the air. And I think the zero pilots are always happy if they can get something like this. I mean, because this is now a 2-day turn game, this means that there's still the original command for all the units. So Dojo still don't did anything. If you play the 1-day turn game, the allies player already have now changed the status of the units. So you will maybe not find these airplanes more here on training. But this is, of course, this can place in both directions. If you play the Japanese, you make something wrong, then this also will hurt you twice. So here we kill now at least 5 airplanes. Fine. The second part get nothing more. Some ground bombardment. Okay, this time we in the day 1 more or less this was a failure. Our zeros coming but they find nothing. Now we find the enemy fighters. And we get 1 kill. There was, I think this is sometimes a bug. Sometimes you can see bigger numbers. They show you like 9 and 9, but in reality there was only 1 airplane. So we kill all. This is 1. Nothing in Manila. And this is now the port strike day 2. But I would now say we can skip this now. You can see we make a lot of hits again. You can see we use all the board. We have lost 1 bomber. A little more damage. And then we can see again that we heavy fires, heavy damage is normally always kill. On fire, heavy damage, yeah. 1 more submarine is it's sure dead. Submarine is dead. Submarine is dead. Destroyer is more or less dead. Submarine is dead. And more submarines are dead. The tanker is on heavy fire, heavy damage is also dead. Here submarine heavy damage more or less dead. More submarines going down. And a little damage. This is now the second attack on Pearl Harbor. Now you can see there are many more airplanes in the sky. This is a training airplane. I mean, the Mohawk I think is also not really a good fighter now more. The White Cat is okay and the Warhawk is I think also okay. And if the player have now already control, because if you make one day turn, then maybe there are many more fighters here in the skies now. And maybe you will also have a strike on your carriers. So I simply organize that my carriers are striking with a distance of 6, so it means this is the maximum distance for me to still bring all of my bombers with maximum bomb load to the target, but also minimize the possibility that he, Pearl Harbor, Dojo make a successful counter-strike on it. I mean, it would be a terrible start if at this day we already losing 1 or 2 carriers. Okay. Now we can see our attack, and I can maybe wait for a moment, then you need to see the flak is also stronger. So we make an 800 kilogram bomb on the heavy cruiser. But normally now we see only, okay, we make a California hit, but again no real damage. And again deck armor hit, but no penetration, and so on and so on. So all the Kate bombers will use now only the 800 kilogram bombs. So the amount of hits will be lower because it's more complicated and more lucky to hit with a 800 kilogram bomb out of a level attack compared to a torpedo attack. And you can see that the interceptors are hunting our bombers after the attack. I mean, we only lost now 1 dive bomber after action, but still we lost some airplanes. We also destroy some units on the ground, but not more, far less than before. And you have here more hits. Now you have only bomb hits, no torpedo hits more. And the problem is the bomb hit can be the 250 or the 800. And this you don't know out of this view now. But we can still see that the battleships are heavy damage, heavy damage, heavy damage, heavy damage, heavy damage, heavy damage. So all battleships are now heavy damage. So we sunk 2 battleships and 6 other battleships are all heavy damage. So at least I would say 1 year out of action, maybe even more. But we sunk here nothing. So no kill, but more damage. Some small attack here. Cargo ship and AVD, nothing crazy. This is now the attack on the airfield again. Try to damage more airplanes on the ground. They're coming a little late. They're making their own attack. And you can see bomb hit on the submarine, oiler, again, submarine tender. We damage more and more. So Pearl Harbor and Manila are both a burning port. And I would say it was maybe not a perfect strike, but it was good enough to start the war for the Japanese. Now the second day or attack on the airfields. Sometimes you're lucky and sometimes, I mean, you cannot always kill everything or damage everything, but if you attack with enough forces, sooner or later you will have the hit normally. There the British are coming again, and we try to stop them again, and we break the attack again. But we can see no official losses, so we only really break the attack. We force them to return without attacking us, but here we see now 19 torpedo bombers coming already. But we also have a lot of this is the first attack, so the first attack you have always the maximum possible interceptors. Every follow-up attack you have less and less fighters. I think we can maybe watch this a little. So if the Zeros can get rid of the Buffaloes, then the Austrians can get rid of the Torpedo Bombers normally. But how the attack order is normally chosen by, I think, the fighter pilots or the fighter commander more or less. So there's no way that you can really influence this. Ah yeah. So half of the torpedo bombers have to return, but still some get through, and the first 4 make a failed attempt. Okay. So out of 19 torpedo bombers, only 8 was able to make the attack, and all 8 failed to get a hit. An official will normally not really kill them completely, but yeah. We soften up the attack, and the attack itself was not successful. So now there are only 5 torpedo bombers coming, much less, but also the numbers of our interceptors are less, so now we can see that the escort also means that escort was successful in bringing in the enemy torpedo bombers, and we have one bomb hit again on a cargo ship. So we damaged something, and we also killed a little, and out of 5 bombers, 4 drop the bomb, and out of this we get 1 hit. The problem is the 500 pound, it's like 250 kilogram, is often enough to finish up a cargo ship, especially if it's on fire. On fire is always really bad for a cargo ship. Okay, we're down to 1-0. So this one pilot already damaged 3 airplanes, forced 1 plane to return. Now the second airplane he attacked every airplane a little to force them to break. I don't know if he do this on purpose. But the Zero fighter must get rid of the escort before he can attack the bombers. But I think one fighter is really hard. The ammunition is simply, I think, not enough to really do this kind of job. Okay, now he damaged already 3. And he forced 3 airplanes to return, but now he also gets killed. Okay. The Zero was not able to attack the bombers. But the bombers also failed to hit something. Yeah. This are our dive bombers. There was a Navy strike last day. They attacking the destroyer here in Pearl Harbor, and now they're finding some heavy cruiser. And heavy cruiser you can still hurt with his bombs. Not easy, but you can do it. If you have enough hits, and sooner or later you also can sink a heavy cruiser. Yeah, we can see sometimes we have a belt armor hit and then nothing happens. A DMS is of course a more soft target. Maybe one hit is already enough to kill this. Important is, I think, here now only the heavy cruiser. I think the Indianapolis is one of the better heavy cruisers. 40 points or something like this. So we can see that maybe 2 of the support ships are damaged or maybe dying. But the Indianapolis, they get 4 hits. They are on heavy fire, but it's not really heavy, not damage or heavy damage. So this kind of bombs they can hurt a cruiser, but it's really just the maximum you can attack, and it's not easy to really destroy a heavy cruiser with this kind of bombs. So something sunk just now. This was a morning strike, now the afternoon strike. Here we see we get a hit on a destroyer. Here we lost our own airplane. Yeah, also lose a lot of recon. Always better for uh, follow-up attacks. If you have a high detection level on the target, it's more easy for the bombers to find the target. Yeah. Okay. Ah, no hit again. We cannot really stop them completely, but we damage many, and the most important is that we don't get a bomb hit. Okay, this is now unescorted torpedo bomber attack, so normally I would expect that we kill most of the torpedo bombers. You can see the zero go in, and this is the onslaught now. No chance. They cannot escape. They are far too slow. Our 20mm gun simply completely destroys this airplane with one hit. So 8 come in, official we kill 5, and there was no attack. The next attempt. Now we have less, and there's still 9 torpedo bombers coming. It looks like that 3 torpedo bombers comes through, but no hit, luckily. So originally there was 9 torpedo bombers, but only 3 get to the target. Okay, more of this light bombers. They all return more or less. I think they give up. No attack, no kill. So the second wave of dive bombers going for the Indianapolis. And the first airplane you immediately make a hit and make a penetration. So sometimes you have this penetration, then you really make damage. If you don't make this penetration, then it's only surface attack or bomb. Like now. Ah no, now we make penetration again. So again, somewhere inside the ship. This really is important that you get this. This is this destroyer escort, low budget stuff. So now we have the Indianapolis because 2 bombs, and both bombs penetrate the armor, the deck armor. So yeah, we were lucky. Before we make 4 hits, but I think none of them really penetrate the armor. But now we have the heavy fires and we have also heavy damage, and then it's normally dead. And before I think we had 4, now only 3 escort ships, so 2 more also heavy damage, heavy fire. But we have 1 lucky guy survive somehow everything. So this was the afternoon attack of December 8th. There we lose one of our cargo ships. But luckily, maybe all the cargo and troops are already unloaded. Yeah, and this I would also. This is also something I would change. I try to conquer this base only to be more near to Manila and Clarkfield. But I think now I would not go for this. I really would go all for San Fernando, and only for the base. You only need this north and south of Manila, because there's still the risk if you do this. There is you can see this base have a lot of coastal gun defense power. If you don't have enough heavy cruisers to suppress this, then there's a chance that you get a hit on your troop transport ships. So I would not go for both bases. I only would go for San Fernando. You have here still the highway going to Manila. You have also the rail already here, so it's all what you need. It's more easy for logistic if you have a rail. At least you need a highway. And the airport is in San Fernando. Here is normally nothing really what you need. You can also see you have simply the higher risk that you lose stuff. Now we make immediately the invasion on Wake Island. So we can, most of the units are maybe already disabled. Unloading. Okay, this is the end of the second day now. Yeah, looks like. I don't know the land voice. Yeah, but I don't know if there's. Yeah, okay. Shock attack of Wake Island. So we can see all the units are suppressed. Then much left. We can take Wake Island.
Hello, you fighting orphans of the Pacific. This is your favorite enemy, Orphan Anne, at Radio Tokyo, with music to lift your spirits and words to depress your morale. But first, Imperial General Headquarters announced today that the ever-victorious forces of the Japanese Empire have captured Wake.
And most important is we also kill all the wildcats, because these are normally the better, the better American airplanes, and so we Dojo cannot use them or somewhere else. And also Wake is important because it's simply a base too near to your own lines, you cannot allow the allies to keep it. Midway is, I would say, it's not critical, but Wake is a must-have. Yeah. This is only some automatic bombardment. Because this is day one, no one can make a command. I cannot ask them to make an attack. So there's some automatic that I think the defender will always go for bombardment if there is an invasion. I think this is automatic game rule. So This is the end of the first turn. It's now December number 9 or 9th December 41. You can see how much you have to organize at the start, because there's really a lot of stuff everywhere, but nowhere you need it. I would keep it simple. Pick 3-4 bases in Japan. You say these are my main ports. Pick 1 or 2 ports for military stuff, 2-3 ports for cargo, resource shipping. Then bring here 3 or 4 bases for the airport to train and maintenance, or train pilots, make pilots for scouting and whatever. And you need also a lot of this is only for anti-submarine. Depending how successful is your attack in Manila, you more or less need this. If you, like my attack was maybe successful at the beginning already, so there are not many submarines left or many are damaged, so the threat of enemy submarines are not high. But if you don't sink so many submarines, maybe they are very early on already enemy submarines here. And maybe only to explain this again, here in Hong Kong or Canton, you need this 360 garrison. So I really I sent a small regiment back to Canton, but I bring the army headquarters and the 2 full divisions to walk to Hong Kong. And I still have here some small light forces here. Normally the Hong Kong forces are not strong enough to really attack you, but I want to bring this army HQ and the full divisions with the full mighty of power. Normally this I think also will arrive, but somehow it was a little slow. But you can normally set this now to combat phase, and if the allies attack, then you have already 1 full division, and this maybe we need a little longer. Also like this. But it's enough to block any attempt from the British to attack you. And the end of the next turn, normally I have here full divisions, and I also have here some pioneers to attack Hong Kong. And in China you must simply free up the links. We will see this, how this works out in the future. And you must organize a lot of stuff. Bring units out of Manchukuo. Bring the units back to the army HQ. We can maybe first check the daily kill ratio. So we can see we killed 53 in the air-to-air and lost 29. Is okay. We destroy a lot on the field. That is of course good, but this is also Pearl Harbor as the first strike. But we also lost nearly the same amount in flak. So what we kill on the ground, we also lose at flak. But main purpose of flak attack, this was normally attack ships. So yeah, operation losses are also okay. And so we kill a lot of enemy buffaloes, but we lost a lot of torpedo bombers. But this is mainly, I would say, Pearl Harbor. We also kill a lot of enemy torpedo bombers because we had enough cap up in Malaya. We also lost a lot of dive bombers, but this is also mainly related to Pearl Harbor. And dive bombers, they still have a high risk to get killed by flak. Important is that we kill also a lot of wildcats. I think this is mainly on Wake Island maybe. We suffer a lot of torpedo bombers. Of course, yeah, can happen. And there we can see that we killed 12, or we can kill 11 Catalinas, I think, in Pearl Harbor on the ground. And 1 was ops losses. So, and then this is smaller. Some zeros, some Oscars, but not crazy much. So at day 1, Allies lost 132 and we lost 90. It's okay. I think this is a typical ratio we had all the time and up to now in the game. It's always like this. 2 kills for me, 3 kills for Dojo, simply. And we lost at day 1 62 killed pilots. That is a high number, but mainly it's the attack on Pearl Harbor. We also see that at day 1 we already have one pilot with 4 kills. Nearly an ace. Yeah, in sunk ships, the Japanese lost at day 1 the one cargo ship we saw. Yeah, but I think this is typical. This is impossible to... It will happen sooner or later. And the Allies lost 3 battleships and 1 battlecruiser. So we sunk 2 battleships in Pearl Harbor and we sunk the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. We know that this is not true. Later on we will find the British ships, but you saw already that the Repulse will later sink. And the Prince of Wales, you will also see something future on. I don't have a video because Dojo is a little slow with uploading his stuff, but we had already in the game something with the Prince of Wales. And we can see we kill some destroyers, but mainly submarines. And this is important. Kill the damn submarines. Manila. Okay. This is of course heavily fog of war. Don't forget this. Yeah. And yeah. The next turn we will see how we will conquer normally the bases. Now we already landed with all our forces. Normally Singora, Kota Baru and Kuantan is our main landing force of the beginning. And later on there will be some landings coming. I don't know if I can catch them already. Maybe here. Ah yeah. Here's a landing forces coming from Mersing. One of the forces. So they are on the way, but they still need some 2-3 days. And this 2-3 days I will use to take the base, install an air base, and then bring the fighters here. They're operating out of Saigon area. Then I must bring them here, and then they can operate. This distance is enough to bring the Cup fighters nearby. If you try to have Cup out of source of Vietnam, it's nearly impossible. It will make the pilots very tired very easily. Yeah. Okay. This is area here. And I try to take this base, because if you have an air base here, you can normally dominate the sea here. It's only if you want torpedo bombers here, you need also an air HQ here. So I don't know if it's really that necessary. You can bring you some fighters, some recon, and maybe also some navy bombers, but then they use only bombs, not torpedoes. I would say take Miri and Brunei immediately as fast as possible, because they are important for oil, and if you have an air base here, you can also attack everything in this area. Because the navy bombers have a range of 15s, and from Miri to Balikpapan it's only 10. So you can strike up to here. So this street is close. If you have torpedo bombers here, and if you can detect the enemy ally ships trying to escape from Philippines back to Java, normally your torpedo bombers can intercept them. Yeah. And what I said, this landing, I would say don't go for this landing, bring everything to San Fernando. It's a risk for no benefit. Yeah. And then you can see I bring a lot of forces on this side. I land here, and then I can move here, and then I simply block Manila from the source, and I try to mess up my units here, and then I try to take Clarkfield and Manila as soon as possible. Yeah, nothing much more. I took Wake Island immediately because I wanted, but I don't use it so much so far. And I have invasion fleets coming here for these two islands, only because they have resources. There are some small forces, they don't really can fight, so you bring a small unit here and you take easy the islands, you take the resources, ship the resources back to Truk, and it's fine. And normally at the same time you can prepare some invasion fleet for Rabaul, but this needs some time. The preparation is not perfectly for this. You must organize here some stuff. You cannot go immediately for Rabaul. I mean, you can go, but I like to organize a little more. And the submarines, I try to bring them here in a line to intercept everything here. Yeah, there's not... I think this is the end of the first turn. We can see the other turns. You can watch what happens later. But that is so far everything, and I hope you enjoy it. See you again. Take care. Bye bye.